Hello, and thank you for joining us in a new video. This time, I am bringing you a comprehensive review of the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. Let's dive right in. This is the flagship device from Xiaomi, and it has now officially made its debut in Mexico. It's the first time, and we're really excited to test this product despite its rather high price. In Mexico, it has launched at a price of 34,999 pesos, which is approximately $1,725 at the current exchange rate. This rate has been fluctuating quite a bit recently. It is a very high price, although you also have to consider that it is the 512GB edition than other. Flagships on the market could have their initial version in 256GB and charge you more expensive the 512 version. Xiaomi bets for a unique edition in Mexico. They also try to give you a little more benefits like 4 months of Spotify Premium, 3 months of YouTube Premium. It also gives you access to VIP Dragon Pass lounges in some airports, although in Mexico there are no such airports. But if you travel on an international level, you can take advantage of this benefit. Additionally, they offer a complimentary screen replacement within the initial 6 months if any damage occurs. Moreover, you receive an international warranty service, along with 3 months of access to 2 terabytes of storage on Google One. Lastly, for a whole year, they provide a repair service for any damage that isn't covered by the warranty. Then all these benefits can possibly be a bit more attractive at such a high price. And if you want the full experience, you would also have to purchase the Legend Photography Kit, which includes more goodies. This kit is priced in Mexico at 3,199 pesos, which is more or less $160. In fact, at the time of recording this video, the Xiaomi store not only includes the Legend Photography Kit, but also includes the Xiaomi Electric Scooter 4 Lite, although in both cases, the Xiaomi Electric Scooter 4 Lite and the Xiaomi Electric Scooter 4 Lite are included. It is while supplies last, making it potentially attractive. If you desire the entire complete kit, including the scooter, I have provided a link to the official store in the description. In this instance, its distribution will occur through Xiaomi stores as well as Telcel. This might be one of the factors contributing to its high price. But what do you say we go through it point by point to understand it better? Even that it is such an expensive device, we will be quite demanding and will only ask for the best of the best. Let's see if is Xiaomi able to deliver in every aspect or not? Let's begin by describing the front design of this device. It offers a cover featuring 4 remarkably subtle curves. In this instance, it includes Xiaomi Shield Glass 2 protection, which is designed to be highly resistant to falls. I haven't tested this feature myself, and I don't really want to test it either. However, it's reassuring that the manufacturer makes an effort to provide a glass that offers good durability for the device. We observe ultra-reduced bezels, confirming that we are indeed looking at a flagship device. This, combined with the 4 curves, provides a very pleasing aesthetic to the eye. In the frames, there is aluminum with an M specification, expected to offer an excellent level of resistance and rigidity. This device measures 9.35mm thickness, so it isn't designed to be a slim flagship or anything similar. And that's not even taking into account the camera module, which significantly protrudes from the body of the device. Some people might like it while others might not, but it's evident that there's a strong emphasis on photography, which is clearly reflected in the design. On the right side, we have a textured on-off button, making it easy to recognize even without looking at it, along with the volume buttons. On the top side, there isn't any connector or port at all. Instead, there are small plastic bands designed to aid the connectivity of the antennas. Moving to the left side, you'll notice the same layout is repeated, without any extra port or connector present. At the bottom, however, you'll find a slot that accommodates 2 nano SIM cards. It's worth mentioning that if you purchase it through Telcel or possibly other phone companies, this second slot might be blocked. Down here, we can also find the microphone, the USB-C port, and several perforations for audio output. On the back cover, we will find fiberglass, which feels incredibly soft to the touch and gives off a very premium feel. In this particular case, I have the black edition, but as you can see, it comes with a red ring that surrounds the camera, giving it a very attractive touch in terms of design. This again highlights that it is a device very much focused on photography. By the way, the glass covering the cameras is Gorilla Glass 1, featuring a special anti-scratch coating designed to prevent any potential damage. The entire device has a total weight of 226 grams. Interestingly enough, it doesn't feel too heavy, even though it's somewhat thick and includes a large camera module. The good news is that it also comes with an IP68 rating, which means it can resist water without issues. However, many Chinese manufacturers are now opting to include IP69 ratings, even in much more affordable devices, so it's quite possible. This is something we can begin to request from more high-end cell phones to accomplish. Alongside this black option, it is also available in white and silver chrome colors. However, let's discuss a bit more about the photography kit, which is truly remarkable. In this particular instance, it features a red and black color scheme that appears very intriguing. Similar to the previous generation, it includes a specific type of case that you place over the device, as well as a multifunctional grip that is attached as an accessory. The USB-C port is quite beneficial as it provides several options for you to explore. For instance, there is a button available to initiate video recording. Interestingly, through the camera settings, you have the flexibility to configure it for performing various other actions, especially when used with the Pro mode. For example, you can swiftly access the white balance section or directly open the metering points section, along with numerous other functions that are available. So, you have the flexibility to combine them in any way you prefer. Additionally, we can discover the camera shutter, which has a two-level mechanism allowing you to focus first before capturing the photo if you desire. Alternatively, within the settings, you have the option to configure it to function as a burst mode, enabling you to simply hold it down and capture numerous pictures simultaneously. Furthermore, here we can also notice the zoom slider, which, similarly, can be customized in the settings to modify its default behavior according to your preferences. It includes a combination feature that allows for rapid switching between preset focal lengths or transitioning in a more detailed manner. As the user, you have the option to decide if you prefer direct switching or a more specific variation. However, it appears to lack intensity control. This means you cannot smoothly or rapidly increase the intensity based on how much you adjust this slider. This limitation prevents a gradual or accelerated adjustment depending on the degree of slider movement. I believe there is room for improvement, particularly since if you often utilize this kind of tool while recording video, the zoom might not appear smooth and it would be significantly better to manage it using the screen controls. An interesting feature of this kit is that it includes 2 additional buttons specifically for the shutter, in case you prefer the shutter to be entirely red. Moreover, there's a detachable thumb rest that enhances your grip, providing a more secure hold. Honestly, I like the grip we got, but if you don't, you can remove it. This grip also includes a dial, which by default controls exposure, but you can adjust the settings to change its function with the device's Pro mode. On the side, there's a USB-C port to charge the grip or the entire phone once it's charged. By the way, this grip includes a 2000 mAh battery that supplements the phone battery, providing extended autonomy for long photo or video sessions. The photography kit also features IP certification, ensuring protection from rain or nearby water, though it can't be submerged. Additionally, it includes a small lock to prevent the accessory from detaching easily, and we're also going to have the option to replace the red ring that encircles the camera. If you prefer, a black ring is included. Additionally, you can add a support for ND filters of 67 nm, which allows you to experiment more with exposure for photography or video, achieving a more professional result. Therefore, this kit undoubtedly provides you with many additional possibilities. However, I must emphasize that it is sold separately, but at least at the time of recording this video, it is included. Another interesting fact is that once you've set up this photo kit, activating the quick photo mode introduces another button. This button accesses the Xiaomi Fast Shoot camera, which presents a totally different interface. It will remind you of a traditional camera because the viewfinder's size changes, becoming entirely clean by placing all the buttons and additional information around it. This setup can provide quite an intriguing feeling when you're using this device. Finally, it also provides a small area where you can attach a band which is already included in case you want to have even more security while holding the device. You can quickly hang it in your hand. This is also a camera, making it a fairly complete kit that's certainly worth having for the full experience. The screen is quite large at 6.73 inches, stepping out of the traditional size of almost all Xiaomi devices. It offers us a high resolution, also very high WQHD, which is 1440 pixels by 3200. This gives us a density of 521 pixels per inch, i.e., it is an ultra-sharp screen. Even text with very small fonts will be very sharp. It will be very difficult to see the pixels unless you place the screen very close to the eye. Then the screen is a total show, although possibly also by having so much resolution will be harmed a bit in the battery. The technology used here is AMOLED, which means it will provide us with the usual vibrant colors, high contrasts, and additionally, through the settings menu, we have the option to select the color palette that we prefer. In fact, it offers multiple settings, allowing you to choose the color representation that suits your taste. Moreover, within the advanced settings section, we can find even more detailed options tailored for professionals. If you desire, you can adjust it to cover the P3 or sRGB color ranges, and it includes even more specific settings to fine-tune your experience. RGB, HSV, and you can adjust contrast and gamma. This phone offers the most screen configuration options, satisfying even the most demanding users. It also features adaptive colors for matching ambient white or manually adjusting color temperature. The screen reaches a peak of 3200 nits, making it very bright and HDR and Dolby Vision compatible, offering a great visual experience. The maximum brightness ensures good outdoor visibility, while the minimum brightness is comfy in some cases. However, in very dark settings, the minimum brightness might be insufficient, and consider that it does not. Extra attenuation option as if we see it in other cell phones. Fortunately, it has an attenuation rate of 1920 Hz, which is very high to avoid the perception of flickering if you are very sensitive when you have the brightness low. Personally, I don't notice the difference, but this option exists and has a refresh rate of up to 120 Hz. With static content, it will save battery. With dynamic content, it will show very smooth movements. It is indeed a very good screen, but I must emphasize that it might consume more battery than you would like due to its extremely high resolution. Although it's set to Full HD through software, the hardware still supports a higher resolution screen. This means you can adjust it to provide even greater sharpness in the elements it displays. Now, let's discuss the sound. In terms of hardware, it's excellent, featuring stereo sound and 2 powerful speakers. In this case, it is not. The primary speaker and the secondary speaker don't differ much, which provides us with an immersive audio experience and excellent sound quality. Additionally, through the software, you have access to a 10-band equalizer and various presets like Dolby Atmos or Xiaomi sound for different sound types. Personally, I wouldn't alter anything, as it sounds great straight from the factory. But it's nice that access to the equalizer is available for any issues. What do you say we listen to a brief test? Keep in mind, though, that hearing it live is a different experience altogether. The device additionally provides us with a surround sound feature, which is perfect for those who wish to have an even more immersive audio experience. Moreover, it comes with some specific Xiaomi sound effects, which are particularly designed for use with headphones. Furthermore, within the software, there is an option available that allows you to manage the volume of different applications independently. This means that if you have multiple applications playing content simultaneously, you have the flexibility to customize which application you want to sound louder. You can decide which one you want to play at a higher volume, and which one should have a lower volume, giving you complete control over your audio experience, which sounds lower. It's useful, for example, for listening to music while gaming or doing similar activities. However, it lacks the ability to send audio from certain apps to Bluetooth speakers while keeping others on the phone. This feature is available on Samsung devices. Like all high-end phones, it doesn't have a headphone jack, so you'll need USB-C headphones or an adapter to enjoy audio without latency. But if latency doesn't matter so much to you and you care more about audio resolution, in this case we will have available not only the basic codecs, but also LHDs in version 3, aptX Adaptive and LDAC. If your headphones are compatible with these codecs, you can enjoy a very high resolution audio if you have a compatible streaming service. The device has 4 microphones. Officially, at first glance, it only appears to have 2, one on the bottom and one on the camera module. However, it's entirely possible that another microphone could be located in the earpiece area for calls, or perhaps there's an additional one within the same grill that appears to be solely for the speaker. Let's proceed to listen to a test in order to analyze its behavior more thoroughly. In this particular scenario, the manufacturer hasn't included any software option that allows you to decide if you want noise cancellation during calls or similar features. Nevertheless, it's clear that in quiet environments, voices are captured with great clarity. Next, we'll examine its behavior in much noisier environments.
'Cause I can see the way you lie, and I try to get my attention. Don't you know I'm all you, I'm all you, I'm all you now, Romeo, and I'm like your sweet little princess. Don't you know I'm all you, I'm all you.
The video that you just watched was recorded using this device, and in the microphones we noticed that it properly adjusts its gain to prevent any distortions or significant losses in sound clarity. This means that the microphones perform exceptionally well. Taking into account the excellent zoom capabilities it possesses, it becomes a reliable ally for concerts. The vibration motor is situated on the x-axis, and you can adjust its intensity in the settings to decide how much feedback you want to feel. You can also choose to have it take a picture in your hand while you are using the device. It's premium, just as we expected, so it delivers well. The front camera is 32 megapixels with f-aperture 2.0 and fixed focus, located in a circular cutout at the top center of the screen. The truth is that although the sensor is 32 megapixels and sounds spectacular, the simple fact of having fixed focus assures us that it is not up to what one would expect, but in a moment we see the results for you to decide for yourself, if you like them or not. This device has a gesture to double press the volume down button to quickly access the camera if you have the device locked. In fact, in the settings you can also choose if you want to take the picture immediately, or there is also another option to double press the power button to do this action, although this gesture is disabled by default. However, by using the power button, we have the ability to quickly access the camera even if we're currently in another application. Although the camera's opening speed might not be the quickest, it is still quite useful. It's important though that in this scenario, it provides us with excellent agility and a fast response time. Additionally, we are offered two distinct angles of amplitude. In the lower right corner, there's also a button that allows us to access the beauty mode. This mode includes various parameters, which we can adjust to modify their intensity according to our preferences. You can use photo mode to make your face look artificial. I set all parameters to max, but you can adjust the intensity. There are real-time color filters with previews. Note, by default, there's no quick shutter gesture, but settings allow adding a palm-controlled shutter. You also have the option to tap on any part of the screen in case you want to take a picture in this way. Additionally, there's an extra shutter button available which you can move and position wherever you prefer, allowing for multiple methods of capturing photos more comfortably. By the way, if you swipe from the top downward, you can access the timer, making it quicker to set. Moreover, if you slide from the bottom upwards, you'll notice that you can access a variety of different photography modes, which is quite interesting. The interface is not only refreshed in its settings section, which is now divided into multiple pages, but also in the part concerning the modes and the camera layout. However, in this instance, they aren't solely photography modes, but rather general modes of the device that you can now access more quickly instead of needing to navigate to the last section. Honestly, the results with this front camera appear quite poor to me, especially when you take into account the price range. The colors are not quite accurate and there's a lack of contrast, with little detail visible in the shadows. Overall, it doesn't appear to be an attractive photograph. The device does allow us to take pictures using the front camera at various angles of amplitude, so in terms of amplitude I have no complaints because it can be well framed. However, the fixed focus means that if you are positioned too close or too far from the camera, you won't achieve a good level of detail. Notice how there are several areas that are completely overexposed, something that on a high-end device is practically unacceptable. Of course, if you want to zoom in on something, the camera is going to come out completely out of focus and is another unacceptable thing in this price range. The backlit performance is also unremarkable. The preview doesn't look optimized, but I don't consider that so serious. What is serious is that the final result still looks slightly overexposed. Although it is not completely burnt out, it seems to me that it does not give an expected quality, even if it is not completely out of focus. In the areas with chromatic aberration, the truth is that it looks more like a mid-range camera. Indoors, it seems that the device has given me a better performance, with slightly more accurate colors, but it still looks like a picture without so much contrast. If you ask me, I would prefer a color rendition like the one you are seeing, but Xiaomi renders a bit paler and with less contrast compared to the rear camera results. Actually, this camera is perceived too much at night. The front camera seemed to me correct. It does not seem to have too many problems. Curiously, the colors do not come out as pale and with the contrast as low as. We saw outdoors, so here I have not been disappointed, although in backlit scenarios, if you will lose a little contrast and obviously also lose level of detail, but still looks correct. For front night portrait, note that it will appear a little more noise compared to photography in a normal mode, but I find that it still comes out a good result with a nice bokeh effect in the background, although fortunately in portrait photos in the day, I noticed that if it gets to keep objects in focus, this is a very positive performance. The bokeh effect is also nice, but as we saw in traditional photography, it still has some overexposed areas and burnt, giving a very poor performance in that regard. So Really, Xiaomi must improve a lot the front camera if it wants to reign in the market of flagship devices. So I think this device invites us a lot to use the rear camera to take selfies, although obviously you don't have the preview, but the quality is very high, and if you use the ultra-wide camera, you have a very good framing, a quality that in general feels much better than the front camera, which from my point of view is very good. The viewpoint is quite disappointing. On the back, there's a 14mm ultra-wide camera with an aperture of f2.2 and a 50-megapixel sensor. This one has autofocus, allowing for macro photos from 5 centimeters away. Next is the main camera with an approximate 23mm focal length and f1.63 aperture, and a 50-megapixel sensor with autofocus and optical stabilization. This sensor is a Sony Lithium 901-inch, a remarkable sensor. Then we find the 70mm intermediate telephoto camera with aperture f1.8, also a 50-megapixel sensor, and in this case, also with autofocus and optical stabilization and macro capabilities from 10 cm distance, which combined with the telephoto capabilities gives us a spectacular result. And finally, the 70mm camera with a 200-megapixel sensor, f2.6 aperture, autofocus and optical stabilization. This is the ISOCELL HP9 from Samsung. As you can see, it features an impressive camera system that enables us to crop within the sensor itself. This capability provides us with optical quality focal lengths of 28, 35, 46, 200, and even 400 millimeters. Therefore, it covers an extensive range of focal lengths while maintaining high quality. Indeed, it stands out as one of the most advanced systems available, and it is likely the most advanced system with official distribution in Mexico. Moreover, the lenses and coatings have been carefully developed in collaboration with Leica. Xiaomi makes sure that the lens is spherical and has high light transmission, meaning it will effectively prevent reflections, which are often generated, especially at night when lights are present. As a result, the photograph will be exceptionally clean because it also includes a double-layer anti-reflective coating. Furthermore, it features various filters, and the design of this lens is highly advanced to enhance the light enters the sensor clearly, ensuring excellent photo quality. Although the cameras have 50 and 200 megapixels, it's important to mention that in automatic mode, the photos will be 12 and 5 megapixels. Unlike other devices with a special focus on photography, this one doesn't offer a 24 megapixel option. What this feature allows you to do is actually change the default focal length. For instance, if you prefer a perspective of say 23 mm, you'll notice it's similar to a 5x zoom. Observe how we can easily switch back and forth between these focal lengths just by clicking on the zoom buttons. This way it provides you with all these zoom settings. As you will notice, the interface responds quite nimbly to continuous captures, and it doesn't freeze at any point in time. In our tests for capturing number 3, we consistently see great response speed. It's a device that takes a picture as soon as you press the button. It also offers a burst of up to 100 pictures and starts quickly, with minimal time between shots, so you can capture the exact moment you want. To start this burst, you have to slide to the left the shutter, because if you keep it pressed, you actually start recording a short video of 15s. Notice that in the lower left corner appears a button to control the exposure compensation, something that is useful especially in some dark situations where some cell phones come to overexpose the image. Then here you can by default adjust the exposure in this way and continue taking all the pictures you want. The pictures you want. In the lower right corner, we will find a button where there are some color filters that I will show you in a moment the results. But they allow you to work in different ways, the lights, shadows, and more, and have been worked in collaboration with Leica. There are also other filters a little more traditional, and there is also the beauty mode, but in this case, with a single parameter, unlike the front camera. At the top, we can find even more buttons. Alongside the flash, there is another button specifically for capturing motion, which will provide you with a quicker response. This is particularly useful if you plan to take a picture of a child or a pet, as they often tend to move suddenly and quite a lot, preventing them from appearing with sweeping movements. Following that, we have a shortcut to Google Lens, and then there's a button to activate dynamic photos. This means it will capture a bit of movement. By the way, whenever you use any of these buttons, volume to snap a photo of you, notice there's a brief countdown and done. In these motion effect photos, a button appears at the top right to play this short video. Then, there's another button to switch styles between Leica Authentic and Leica Vibrant, offering a classic photography style, even with a black vignette around it, which enthusiasts of this effect will really enjoy. But I prefer Leica Vibrant, which is the setting we take all our pictures with, which I'll show you next. If we tap on the screen, we can adjust the exposure or the focus, But remember that we can also access the Pro mode, where we will have more things available, for example, the compensation, the shutter speed that can go up to 30s, the ISO that can go up to 12,800, white balance, auto or manual focus, and note that we can go saving different. There are presets available, allowing us to change multiple parameters simultaneously with just one touch. This feature is particularly beneficial for experienced photographers who are already familiar with their specific set of parameters. Additionally, note that at the top, we have the ability to quickly adjust the image resolution. It also offers the capability to capture photos not only in the JPG format, but also in RAW, along with another format known as Euro. This flexibility can be quite advantageous for those looking for more control over their photography. In the bottom left corner, you'll notice another button. This button allows us to adjust additional image parameters, including contrast, temperature, tint, and even saturation and sharpness. These adjustments help achieve the specific coloration you desire for your photo. Meanwhile, in the bottom right corner, there's another button that provides access to the filters we saw available earlier. Furthermore, if you slide from top to bottom, you'll observe that the metering type setting also appears, and we can activate a timed burst. Interestingly, in this particular case, it does not allow us to use a zebra pattern to view the overexposure zones. However, we do have access to the histogram located in the upper left corner. Regarding Smart Capture, it's important to note that it cannot detect documents directly from the main mode. Nevertheless, we can access the document mode, which is available for the immediate cropping of these photographs. Fortunately, it also lets us use the ultra-wide camera. So, you don't need to be too far away from the documents or sheets to be able to scan. And at the top, note that it also offers us different color settings, whether we want to keep the style like a photograph or like a black and white photocopier. Or like this optimization keeping the color. Just note that it allows us to make some edits on the sheet, but we can't go adding multiple sheets. On the same document, to easily export it to PDF, then you probably don't have a scanner as advanced. The results with this entire photographic system are actually quite impressive. Let's begin by examining the ultra-wide camera, which provides an excellent level of detail. Typically, in these types of cameras, we encounter images with less detail than what this device offers. In fact, we also notice that it manages edges, distortions, and more remarkably well. We also observe that it manages color in a manner very similar to the main camera, which results in a consistent and unified experience when using the main camera. Additionally, we discovered that the quality is quite impressive, and I appreciate that in this instance, there isn't a massive or abysmal difference between the quality of the ultra-wide camera and the main camera's quality. In fact, you can still zoom in and perform a crop within the sensor to capture 46 mm images, which means a 2x digital zoom. However, even though it is digital zoom, it still appears with an impressively high level of detail. When using the 70mm lens, we once more achieve a 100% optical result, confirming the level of detail completely, and again, the lens provides excellent quality with no distortion or anything undesirable. Interestingly, the switch to the super telephoto camera happens quite quickly, suggesting that the intermediate telephoto camera may not offer much utility, at least in these types of scenarios. Note that here we switch lenses, but it still keeps high detail. I love how at various focal lengths the results are excellent and color rendering is consistent with slight variations. Now we start with digital zoom at 10x. Notice the tremendous detail it achieves. It looks like excellent photography. Now you are viewing a 30x zoom photo, which is typically the maximum used in daily life. Once again, note the incredible level of detail preserved from the original distance at which the photo was taken. Consider that in this instance, it is an object that doesn't really provide ultra-defined lines, yet in the final photograph, it is processed exceptionally well. In fact, the device still permits a significantly higher zoom capability reaching up to 120 times magnification. It continues to apply effective optimization through artificial intelligence. However, remember that in this case, these types of objects will be optimized, but it might encounter challenges with other less defined objects. Here, we will observe another carousel of photographs, allowing you to appreciate the various focal lengths and see how the device maintains excellent photographic quality in each of these instances. Photos. We are currently reaching zoom 10x, and you can notice the incredible level of detail that this device offers. It almost appears like optical zoom, as there is no noticeable loss in image quality at any time. Furthermore, at 30x zoom, which I must emphasize is the maximum you typically use in everyday situations, the quality remains excellent. So, whether it's short, medium, or long-range zoom, this device functions nearly flawlessly. This is a photograph with 60x zoom, and notes like this is a clear example that well-defined letters or figures will receive a good optimization by artificial intelligence, and slightly more abstract figures are not going to look as sharp or will not have as much detail. But the truth is that the optimization is very good. Indoors, the ultra-wide camera also performs very well. I like it specifically because of the good color rendition it has. The main camera continues to provide a good rendition of colors, even in scenarios where lighting conditions are not ideal, and also when doing intermediate cropping. With the 70mm camera, the colors may have become a bit paler, yet I truly appreciate the detail level it offers and how effectively it manages the darker sections of the image. It controls noise well while maintaining the texture of the images. It performs exceptionally well. The 100mm camera once again shows accurate color rendition, even with warm lighting, maintaining an almost perfect level of detail. Look at this photo with 10 times zoom indoors. The texture is perfect and the colors are beautiful. Now, observe the photo with 30 times zoom indoors. The result is impressive, but here's something curious. There are some areas slightly out of focus for some reason. But I insist in general, despite being a photograph with less lighting, it still gives a good result. And when you start to apply even more zoom through artificial intelligence, it will try to optimize the textures. But there you might have a bit unexpected results. In backlit scenes, notice that the preview is indeed optimized, so you don't see overexposed or burned out areas, and the performance will also be positive. Although with the ultra-wide camera, he observes that in areas where edges exist between highlights and shadows, you might end up noticing a bit more chromatic aberration being revealed, which, considering the price range, is not very nice. It appears that this is something that could be improved. However, the balance between highlights and shadows is quite good, even though some overexposed or slightly burnt areas still show up. The main camera sees improvements in this aspect, as we do not find completely burnt areas, nor is it. It generates a significant amount of chromatic aberration. The result, however, looks quite nice. Additionally, with the rest of the cameras, we will find a good balance between highlights and shadows, as you can observe. Although in these backlit scenarios, it seems that the color consistency isn't maintained across all the cameras, you can notice a slight difference here. Nevertheless, observe how photography with the 100mm lens is already providing us with an exceptionally nice level of blur. In this case, it's entirely optical, and we're not using the portrait mode, and the result already looks exaggeratedly beautiful. And being a completely natural effect, we are not going to have any inconvenience with the hair or anything like that. So for portrait photography, it's spectacular to use this lens in the evenings with a light source present in the frame. The result is exceptional. It does a very good job of controlling noise, it exposes the brightest areas well, and you see a good level of detail even with the ultra-wide camera. So imagine with the other cameras, the result is even better, especially with the main camera, which has the largest aperture, we see more detail. Note that even with the crop inside the sensor, it maintains excellent textures, and the result is great. The 70mm camera might struggle to focus despite a good aperture, which wasn't surprising. However, with the 100mm camera, we regain very good quality. With a narrower aperture, the brighter areas are well exposed, and noise is perfectly controlled in the darker areas, keeping detail levels high, resulting in an exceptional outcome. If there's no light source in the frame, the ultra-wide camera performs well, as does the main camera, without needing a specific night mode. However, keep in mind that when you attempt to zoom into the sensor, it is possible to overexpose and oversaturate the image. Therefore, the more zoom you apply, the worse the device's performance becomes. In this nighttime photograph, when there's no light source available, the 100mm camera struggles to maintain good detail due to the long exposure needed. Among all, the worst performer at night is the 70mm camera, which suffers from this oversaturation issue. However, these results are with night mode on, and they look very bad and artificial. But if you turn night mode off, notice how it's going to come out slightly better, though still oversaturated. With the 100mm lens, it is definitely recommended to take the picture without night mode because it gives you a much more realistic photo, more natural and without so much saturation. Although we will find a bit of artifacts in the darker areas, but nothing serious. Interestingly, the recommendation for preserving good image quality in extremely dark areas is to actually switch off night mode. However, here you are presented with another small carousel of images taken at night using various focal lengths to validate what I've been saying. This device truly excels in photography. I appreciate its ability to maintain pronounced shadows, which adds a solid sense of depth to the images. Interestingly enough, in this alternative scenario that I tested, the 70mm camera did not show such an unusual result regarding color and night mode when compared with a 100mm camera. Note how it nicely elevated the level of detail, providing an exceptionally nice result for macro photography. This is about as close as you could get with the main camera. It is definitely not ideal to take pictures of this style with this particular camera because the focus is uneven and requires you to be at a distance. Remember, the ultra-wide camera has autofocus. With auto macro mode on, it uses this lens for close shots, giving more detail and focus. Zooming in 2 times with the main camera may not be as focused, but results can be good. The best option is the 70mm camera with macro capabilities for detail. It is an image that showcases an excellent color rendition. This is definitely a device with very good macro capabilities as well. Here, you can see another reference example using a 1 peso coin. This is the closest you can get with the main camera. Now, this is what it would appear like with a 2x zoom crop, which honestly looks quite detailed. And with the 3x camera, notice how close you can get while still maintaining excellent detail. And if you zoom in just a little more, the result looks even better. This way, although the focus is very spot on, so you have to be careful with that, but it looks great. It's one of the best devices if you like macro photography as well. But if instead of being very close, you want to be very far away, here's the ultra-wide camera for reference. And now the camera in panorama mode, which by the way, you still need to download it with internet connection for some strange reason. But fortunately, if it is a picture with a high resolution, even if you'll notice the blending areas between one photograph and another, and it seems to me that Xiaomi should work on improving this aspect. However, it does have a decent dynamic range and generally good color rendition, although it still doesn't allow us to use the ultra-wide camera in this panoramic mode. Now let's look at the results of portrait photography. With the 23mm lens, it's not highly recommended for taking portraits because they don't appear very professional. But if you have the option available with a crop of 46mm looks better due to the telephoto look, retaining good detail even with digital zoom. The bokeh effect is nice with good object and gap detection, but using the telephoto cameras will enhance performance. Here's an example with the 70mm lens showing good detail though it lacks high dynamic range, causing some areas to be overexposed. But overall, the portrait photography seems to be of a very positive quality, thanks to its excellent depth detection capabilities. With the 100mm lens, we will achieve the best portrait photography on this device. It looks extremely professional, featuring a very nice bokeh effect. Although, I was mentioning to you that even if you do not use the portrait mode, the result appears even more natural. And by the way, the manufacturer also offers the option to take these pictures with a different color rendering called Lake Authentic, where it's going to provide us with slightly more pronounced dark areas, adding that distinctive Leica touch to the pictures, which also looks quite nice. As a user, it will ultimately be your choice what you prefer, although with some of these settings you might encounter some overexposed areas in the photograph once again. Therefore, you need to be a bit more cautious about the lighting that falls on the face. However, overall, the device's portrait mode stands out as one of its major strengths, even from various angles. Distances provide us with a high quality, and I emphasize, an excellent depth detection to achieve a result that closely resembles what a camera with a significantly more professional lens would produce. Observe here another scenario with backlight, where there are areas of light and shadows on the face, including the lens area, which is typically very challenging, yet the device has managed to resolve it impressively well. So there is no doubt that portrait photography is excellent on this device, and at night portraits will also be of very good quality. Notice that with the 70mm camera, a nice focus blur effect is generated. One level of detail good enough considering we are in a dark setting, but the 100mm camera is the one that I found even more spectacular, with a level of detail even superior to that of the 70mm camera, which I find curious because it has a more closed aperture. However, seems to make excellent use of the 200-megapixel sensor, allowing for improved lighting. The bokeh effect is extremely positive, enabling it to capture remarkably good portrait photos even at night. Whether you're photographing people or objects at night, the results are impressive. Additionally, in areas with significant darkness, it maintains a high level of detail, effectively eliminating noise and once again applying this strong effect in. And on very thin objects, where it is very difficult to detect their depth, the portrait mode may even fail in these very dark scenarios. However, I was already anticipating you that this 100mm lens, even without the portrait mode, already generates you a natural blur effect. So look at the style of photo we would have using this lens. It is really very nice, even at night. It is quite possibly the best night zoom camera available in the industry today. This device also features high-resolution modes for each of its cameras. So, even if you take photos using the ultra-wide camera, you can crop them while still keeping a high image quality. And this really does show. With the main camera, the same exact thing occurs. Just look at the impressive level of detail it manages to achieve. However, I love the fact that even with telephoto cameras, you are able to capture these types of pictures in high resolution, allowing you to extract various framing options. With the 200 megapixel periscope camera, observe the incredible level of detail it achieves. It's truly amazing how you can zoom in so closely to the image and still see a significant amount of detail. It certainly performs at a remarkable and spectacular level. Additionally, the device integrates a wide variety of different color effects and rendering capabilities. Ovlu, so you can choose your favorite effect in case you prefer a picture with a different character. And for motion photography, note that all the cameras outdoors will behave very well. We will see practically no sweeping movements, although again in scenarios with a lot of movement you might notice some burnt areas. But in general, let's say that it behaves very well in all this. In indoor scenarios, you might face more complications due to the lack of sufficient lighting. The ultra-wide camera, by the way, does not support a motion capture mode, but the main camera does support a special mode. In this case, you are looking at the picture without the action mode turned on, and you will notice that the movements appear swept. Now, with the action mode activated, it will prioritize a faster shutter speed, which helps to better define the movements, although you also lose a bit of... The rear camera has limited lighting input, which causes the photos to lose some detail, but on the plus side, it manages to control movements more effectively. The same issue will occur with the 70mm camera. Without using the action mode, movements appear blurred, but with the action mode, they are somewhat more defined. Interestingly, in this camera, the difference isn't extremely noticeable. However, you will observe a much more pronounced difference with the 100mm camera, extremely low at 1/50s. However, with the action mode, you'll notice it now uses a much faster speed of 1/600s. This allows for more defined movements, though I must emphasize, the level of detail is slightly reduced. Nonetheless, I believe we can all agree that this device ranks among the best in terms of photography. Regarding its video capabilities, it offers up to 8K at 30 frames per second with any of the rear cameras, which is truly remarkable. You also have the ability to record in stunning 4K at an impressive 120 frames per second with both the main and periscope cameras. Alternatively, you can choose to record in 4K at 60 frames per second with either of those cameras, including the front one. It's evident that this device offers excellent capabilities. Additionally, it's worth mentioning that its selector for changing resolution or frame rate per second is very convenient. By sliding from top to bottom, you can easily change the aspect ratio, allowing for an even more panoramic video, if you prefer a video with a more expansive view. An interesting and curious fact is that this device also includes a built-in teleprompter, which is quite useful for content creators. It's something I haven't noticed on any other device so far. So, without the need to purchase an additional app, you have the ability to write your script right here. If you switch to the front camera, you can speak as the text gradually scrolls by. Naturally, you have the option to configure both the size and the speed of the scrolling text, making it appear to be a very useful tool indeed. It's important to note that for video recording, we also have the exposure control, which is quite useful. Additionally, we will find the Leica color filters. However, in this instance, they aren't compatible with 4K but are exclusively available in full HD. So from my perspective, it loses some of its appeal. In fact, there's also the beauty mode available, but again, it's only compatible with full HD, although it does offer many parameters to modify your face during video recording. When making a recording, be aware that we have a convenient ring for scrolling through all zoom sections. Additionally, there is a button to pause and resume the recording and another button for taking pictures. However, we cannot turn on the flashlight prior to starting the video recording, nor can we switch to the front camera. In this generation, Xiaomi has also removed the button that was used to create markers for highlights in the video recording. Within the Pro mode, we discover even more options, not just for photography, but also for video. You'll notice an audio monitor appears, and in this instance, the video turns quite pale. This happens because I've activated recording in a log format, which is intended for the most professional use. Additionally, note that it includes an option for multi-camera work, which lets you leverage the Xiaomi ecosystem. So, if you have other Xiaomi phones with these features, you can benefit from this capability, even within this range. If you happen to find several of them, you have the option to create your very own multi-camera mode. From the tablet, you can easily manage each of these cameras to record various angles simultaneously, and all of this is done wirelessly. Honestly, one of its attractions is also one of its strong points. It's important to note that within the Pro mode, you have the ability to select the type of audio it will capture. By default, it is set to omnidirectional, but you also have the option to choose if you want it to be front audio, rear audio, or audio that follows a certain kind of pattern. Trajectory. It also has its gain control and all the color and lighting controls that I had already shown you in the picture. You can also access the same filters, and we will also find a movie mode that will try to blur the background. In a moment we will see the result. This is an example of the 4K recording. Note that it allows you to zoom in and crop in post-production, still maintaining a very good level of detail, and the curious thing is that you can record with any of the filters. The 4 rear lenses don't allow switching while recording, but they're great. Here's what 60 frames per second recording looks like. You can use any lens for a smooth experience. Now, at 30 frames per second, notice the good quality. I believe the experience with color is generally positive. However, with the ultra-wide camera, it appears that the colors are slightly less accurate. When it comes to video, I think the main camera shows a noticeable improvement in quality and records exceptionally well. In fact, if we switch to the telephoto camera, you'll notice that the colors might be a bit too saturated. Therefore, it might be necessary to adjust the color management that Xiaomi applies in video recording across all cameras. But overall, the recording is quite positive. What I really like is how it allows us to seamlessly switch between all the cameras without having to cut the video. Even when using the periscope camera, we still get a very good image quality. In this particular case, for video recording, it allows us to reach up to 30x as the maximum zoom. Although the sharpness isn't quite as good as in photography, when compared to other devices, we still find a very good image quality. One area where Xiaomi might want to focus on improvement is the transition between each of the cameras. Currently, it doesn't offer a very smooth experience, as there are moments when the switch between lenses feels somewhat abrupt and a bit aggressive. Enhancing this aspect would certainly improve the user experience. Additionally, maintaining a consistent color profile across all cameras is crucial to avoid noticeable changes. When it comes to indoor scenes, the ultra-wide camera performs well, capturing good color, although in some areas it may. In darker scenes, such as the one displayed on the right, you'll observe significantly more noise than we would prefer. This suggests that the ultra-wide camera may not excel in video recording. Once again, you will see a notable improvement in quality when transitioning to the main camera. This camera manages noise more effectively, even though the white balance might become somewhat muddled in these specific indoor scenarios. However, I believe the image quality is quite good, and in Pro mode, you can set a fixed white balance to prevent it from changing too drastically. Now, when switching to the intermediate telephoto camera, the colors seem less accurate to me. Additionally, it appears that there might be more difficulties in controlling noise in indoor scenarios, and even the focus can become slightly lost in these types of situations. And something interesting I noticed is that when you use the telephoto lens and pan vertically, it might not feel very smooth, it's subtle, but in horizontal panning, it's not noticeable. It might be a small bug they need to fix with an update. You may also see that the intermediate telephoto camera can struggle with focus in low light scenarios. Finally, the higher zoom camera may struggle with white balance indoors, but even at max zoom, the detail holds well. Backlit shots are handled well, the ultra-wide camera performs nicely. Even with the face close, there are no overexposed areas in these situations. There are lights and shadows in front of the face, you are not going to have any problems. Switching to the main camera, again we notice a little more saturated color and better overall quality, but the focus gets a little lost in these complicated backlit scenarios. Switching to the intermediate telephoto camera, we see a still positive performance in the backlit sense, maintaining a good balance between highlights and shadows without aggressive changes in exposure, although, again, the colors seem to be a little bit more saturated than they should be. And finally, when we switch to the higher zoom camera, we see a little more natural colors and overall better performance, although the focus can get to vary if it does not detect the face, obviously, but I think it recovers with good speed. This camera seems to me that performs very well. An important fact is that this device can record with Dolby Atmos, although this option is turned off by default, so you have to turn it on if you want to record with Dolby Atmos. You want a video like this on a compatible monitor, trust me, it looks amazing with some areas much brighter. You're seeing an SDR conversion, but in Dolby Vision mode, colors aren't overly saturated like in normal mode. Any camera can record in this mode, and you don't need to stop and restart recording, so it maintains high quality video recording. For more advanced features, I would highly recommend enabling Dolby Vision for its exceptional quality. The ultra-wide camera struggles significantly at night, revealing many weaknesses. The image appears very dark with substantial noise, failing to balance lights and shadows effectively. In the darkest areas, even though it attempts to maintain natural lighting, we notice slightly more noise than we would prefer. When switching the main camera in darker areas, you might notice that it tends to oversaturate somewhat. And even when there is some light present in the frame, it attempts to balance, but it's still insufficient. This contrasts with its performance in photography, where the device excelled at night. However, in video mode, it doesn't seem to perform as well. Also, when switching to the 70mm camera, we can once again observe difficulties in focusing, some challenges in controlling noise, and these issues remain noticeable. The camera exhibits some bothersome pauses when panning vertically. However, I appreciate that in the darkest areas, it opts for the optical zoom instead of relying on digital zoom. This occurs when we are within the 70mm range, making the image appear quite natural. Yet when we extend to the 100mm range, where the periscope camera should be utilized, it surprisingly switches back to digital zoom. As a result, while it gains light, it loses detail, which creates a slightly odd sensation when navigating through the entire zoom range. If you point it at a well-lit area, it will make the switch to the periscope lens, so you might notice that good level of detail. So it's curious how Xiaomi manages all these lenses. The stabilization of this device is good. Observe how recording with the ultra-wide camera, if you are walking, you can hardly perceive the movements. If you are running, it also controls them in a good way. Only a little vibration is perceived, but the results look very good. Switching to the main camera, we will notice basically the same. Walking, you don't notice very aggressive movements, and in more action scenes, it still controls the movements correctly. Occasionally, compensation movements are perceived, but this is normal and expected. Even if you record with the telephoto camera and you are walking, I think it has a very good level of stabilization. And with the higher zoom camera, we still see a sufficiently good level of stabilization, although as long as you're shooting with the telephoto camera, it's still a good enough level of stabilization. When you zoom in more, it's clear that stabilization becomes somewhat more challenging. However, the outcome remains quite impressive. The device features a shot steady mode that provides us with a 4K video. It reduces the resolution to enhance stabilization, yet there's still a slight vibration noticeable. I don't perceive a significant difference, but you do lose some detail, which makes it less appealing to me. Additionally, with the shot steady mode, switching between cameras is not possible. But now you can observe the result. With the main camera, I believe you can notice a difference here because the compensating movements aren't as aggressive. And when you're shooting with one of the telephoto cameras, the shot steady mode is definitely recommended, as it helps balance the movements more effectively. Even with the higher zoom camera, if you're walking around, it maintains excellent stabilization. However, the focus will be lost more frequently because of the greater distance that needs to be analyzed. Despite this, I really love the level of stabilization it provides. The camera offers excellent image quality even in this particular model, and achieving such a high-quality image is possible with the shot steady mode. When it comes to focusing, we observe a commendable performance. The main camera, in my opinion, adjusts focus effectively. While it may not have the fastest focus speed, it manages to adjust quite well. It's important to note that the ultra-wide camera is capable of focusing on extremely small objects, which is ideal for macro scenes. This means you could use it in certain situations. However, focusing with this camera can be somewhat more challenging. It doesn't offer the same level of precision, making it a bit more difficult to achieve a precise focus. It's slower, but the truth is, the focus is excellent for scenes with objects of this size, especially due to the depth of field in the background. Also, remember that the intermediate telephoto camera has macro capabilities, making it useful for close-up scenes with great detail. Notice it provides a very good image, and even with aggressive distance changes, the camera reacts quite well. So, if you enjoy capturing scenarios from various perspectives, whether using a wide-angle lens, a macro lens, or even a telephoto lens, this device performs exceptionally well. Although the periscope camera lacks the ability to focus closely, it still creates a wonderfully positive blur effect in the background, which you can definitely take advantage of. Additionally, the device includes a portrait recording mode. However, the truth is that the outcome appears quite simple when viewed in full HD and looks quite artificial. Fortunately, the effect is maintained even when the face isn't detected. Notice that as I move closer to the camera, this blur effect intensifies, and it diminishes as I move further away. So, the experience does attempt to be quite realistic. However, due to the level of detail, I believe the result appears quite artificial. Fortunately, it does seem to attempt to keep objects in focus, especially if they are near your hand or you are holding them. But take a look at this amazing result. This device allows us to utilize this 100mm telephoto camera and observe how it creates a completely natural background bokeh effect from this distance, making the outcome appear extremely professional. Therefore, it really doesn't make much sense to use portrait mode when you have the option of native and natural recording with this lens. The result is absolutely spectacular. We will additionally discover a fast camera mode. In fact, this feature allows you to utilize the camera of your choice, offering a speed setting starting from 4x, which can be particularly useful for recording people. Alternatively, you have the option to go up to 1/800x, which is excellent for capturing landscapes and a variety of other more spectacular scenes. This mode offers great versatility, and I really appreciate that it permits the use of any of the 4 rear lenses. Moreover, it allows you to record in 8K at 30 frames per second, which is quite impressive. In slow motion, we will discover, for instance, 240 frames per second in Full HD, which, let's say, is expected. Furthermore, we also find 480 frames per second for even slower motion, still in Full HD. Although, honestly, the video appears to have less resolution than Full HD, you do get that extra slowness. The file indeed goes to 480 frames per second. Moreover, the device also enables us to record at 960 frames per second with significantly more slowness. The issue is that it lacks an automatic start feature and only the final segment slows down, requiring multiple attempts. However, once you manage to jump at the precise moment, the unfortunate part is it doesn't return to normal speed, resulting in a rather odd sensation. This has been an ongoing problem for several generations, and hopefully they will address it soon. Actually, you might find this surprising, but it can also handle even slower recording, reaching up to 1920 frames per second, yet another. It can be somewhat challenging to hit the exact moment, so you might need to make several additional attempts. However, after 1 or 2 tries, you can eventually achieve a satisfactory result. The issue arises if you lack the opportunity to repeat the attempt, as this device requires multiple tries before obtaining a good slow motion result. Nonetheless, it can practically freeze time, making the result appear nice. And interestingly, it also enables us to apply slow motion with telephoto cameras, although in this case the file comes at 30 frames per second with the automatic slow zone. But something that I like even more, which curiously is not within the slow motion mode, is the recording in 4K at 120 frames per second, with what you would have something very spectacular for even cinematic scenes with a very high level of detail. Currently, there are few devices that are capable of recording in this quality and even let you record in this. The front camera, as I previously mentioned, has excellent quality. Indeed, the front camera, as I said before, possesses very good quality. Regarding the photograph, the front camera, as I told you, doesn't completely convince me. Here is an example, 60 frames per second, and it indeed resembles a high-end recording. However, now observe the video at 30 frames per second, initially it doesn't appear bad. Therefore, we conclude that it's not a poor recording, though within its price range we could expect more. We would really like to request significantly more, particularly in terms of color intensity and contrast. Thankfully, when it comes to backlight, it performs quite well without any overexposed areas. However, there are moments when we experience slightly aggressive jumps in exposure, resulting in a bit more noise, but this occurs mainly in well-lit settings. During the daytime, it doesn't appear too bad until you start comparing it to other devices that provide more accurate colors and improved contrast. Additionally, having a fixed focus implies that you are unable to zoom in on anything to capture a better image. It is difficult to focus it, and that does affect the user's perception. However, the stabilization is very good, and even running it performs very well, so it has pros and cons in recording. The front camera indoors will perform in a simple way. Here it is even more noticeable that it is not a camera of the highest level. There is a little more noise, and in backlight definitely does not have the capabilities to balance lights and shadows well. Then in a device so expensive, yes, we would like to observe a front camera that performs better. When recording videos and during nighttime, you will notice once more that the image quality is not up to par with high-end devices. It appears too grainy, even in well-lit areas, and the level of detail is low. Additionally, the color seems somewhat pale. It's clear that the front camera does not meet the expectations one would have for a device in this price range, which is intended to compete as a top-tier product in the industry. And well, we will also discover the fast camera mode, which has the same configuration and behavior that we observed in the rear camera. Fortunately, it does have stabilization, so it performs quite well. Additionally, we will find basic slow motion at 120 photos per second, meeting what one would expect. Interestingly, it also includes a portrait recording mode that blurs the background, and the result appears a bit more natural than with the rear camera, possibly due to the distance of the camera. Although it is not in 4K, which would be ideal for the best quality, it is still in Full HD. This can provide a sense of a more professional video. It even stays focused on the objects in the foreground. I find it interesting that it maintains focus without having to touch them or keep your hand close, which gives a very professional feel in this regard. If it were in 4K, it would be perfect, but it performs quite well. Additionally, it also supports dual recording mode, allowing us to have the screen split in two with the rear camera and the front camera at the same time, although again it is not a video in 4K. Fortunately, it allows us to transition to a picture-in-picture mode in a simple way, and also to alternate who is the leading camera. If the front camera or the rear camera, but you must always transition to the split screen mode. Fortunately, it keeps the autofocus and also allows us to zoom, but it must be with 2 fingers, so the experience is not so fluid also, which prevents us from making the dynamic switch between the rear cameras. Regarding the software, we will find Android 15 along with Hyperos in its DOS version 10.10. Xiaomi frequently releases updates to enhance and fix various elements. In this case, there is a commitment to 4 years of software updates and 6 years of security patches. Therefore, we anticipate that over time, this operating system will continue to progress and improve. However, given that it is such an expensive device, we would certainly appreciate a longer period of updates. Now, let us show you some of the tools that come included. Primarily on the lock screen, we will have some excellent customization options. You will notice that we can easily change the style of our lock screen without any difficulty. We can even create multiple skins and switch between them with just a couple of taps and scrolls. Additionally, there are various effects, special that detect the depth, allowing the clock to be integrated together with the image. Perhaps the image will appear slightly above the clock, or vice versa. I must insist that this gives us an excellent level of customization, enabling us to choose the style we prefer. Additionally, we are going to find the always-on display tool. As you will notice, it can align with the theme to provide a kind of smooth transition between the lock screen and the clock. And the always-on display cover, as you can see in this instance, will depend on the theme you have applied. However, there are other covers available as well. Speaking of themes, there is a comprehensive center where you can download all these themes. Some of them are paid, while others are free, offering an extreme level of customization. In this regard, it is certainly one of the devices that provide more customization options. You will notice that some themes can even alter how the animations and other aspects behave. However, I forgot to mention that in the always-on display skin, you also have the same wallpaper available but in a dimmed style. This can provide a good experience as well. In this case, you will notice a sort of synchronization. For instance, when the screen is on, my body passes over the clock, and when it is off, the clock is on top. So there is a transition and interaction. Will depend entirely on the theme that you are using, so you could also have a somewhat more elegant typography with the picture that you desire. And you can specifically modify the text that appears there, including the font, the orientation, and many more details also related to the clock. Of course, we will also be able to apply some special effects to the font as well as some depth effects on certain images. However, in that case, your always-on display cover would also appear with your photo, and simply when you activate the screen, would appear more vibrant and intense. However, it will clearly consume more battery. But if you can achieve an effect similar to that released by the iPhone, you might not realize that you will also have spam on your lock screen with images that constantly change, along with observations that suddenly show you text with some news or something that redirects you to a web page. Personally, this is quite bothersome to me especially. On a device that is this expensive, it's obvious that you should be able to disable it, but honestly, it's something that shouldn't even occur. It also includes the wallpaper carousel feature, which I personally find unappealing, as it changes the image each time you attempt to unlock your device. Additionally, you have access to the well-known super wallpapers, which display a pleasant animation while transitioning between the always-on display cover, the lock screen, and the home screen. Talking about the home screen, it offers 2 styles, with App Drawer, Classic, and a Light mode with larger sizes. We can remove text from widgets and icons for a cleaner look and change the recent apps view from the original vertical. I find it a bit unappealing that it's somewhat more traditional compared to other devices. However, we do have the option to switch to the more conventional view, similar to what we see on other phones. I actually appreciate that it offers an option for you to select which applications should display a blurred preview, providing a bit more privacy if you desire, as in this scenario. Clearly, it also includes some gestures, such as activating the virtual assistant via the power button or swiping 3 fingers to capture a screenshot. By the way, you have the option to take a screenshot with more content than is visible by pressing a simple button. Alternatively, you can take a partial screenshot by placing 3 fingers on the screen and then drawing a box or a circle, depending on what you wish to capture. Additionally, we have the ability to turn on the flashlight by double tapping the power button. However, this would replace the gesture currently used to open the camera. And finally, there is a combination of buttons that you can use to access the shutdown menu or perform a reboot. It also features a back touch option. However, having a mega camera module on the back might make it a bit more challenging to activate it. But you can configure both double tap and triple tap gestures and notice that they work well. In this instance, with 2 taps, I access the calculator and it responds quickly. With 3 taps, I can activate the silent mode and you can see that it also worked effectively. This seems that it does come very well optimized. Obviously, you can choose some other tools or quick shortcuts you want to use. Interestingly, it seems to be a bit more optimized for China, as it allows you to open also Alipay or WeChat payment codes. In that sense, we would like more of a tailored global experience. We will also find the traditional floating ball to have a more extensive menu available at our fingertips with a single touch, or we will also find the use mode. One-handed, activated by swiping down from the bottom, is honestly tricky to use and requires patience to work smoothly. Note that it only adjusts content vertically, which I personally dislike. Additionally, the floating windows feature is accessible via this small sidebar, allowing us to click any app to run it in this mode and watch, which enables us to open up to 2 applications in this format simultaneously. However, at this moment, it seems like Chrome was closed. But take a look, there they are, and we have the ability to resize them. We can also minimize them by bouncing them to a corner, or alternatively, restore them back to full size. We can even switch from a full-size app to a floating app. Therefore, using gestures, the overall experience appears to be quite positive. If we want to close them, just slide them up. Note that YouTube can't open in this format, but Instagram can. We can also open apps in split screen, though it's a bit more complex. In the recent apps list, press this button and that's it, you can open the second app. Combined with floating apps, it works well. Have up to 4 apps open simultaneously. The apps stay connected in the recent apps list. This sidebar also mentions support for gaming and video apps, which we'll explore later. You can select which apps you want these extra tools to appear in, allowing you to record the screen, capture, wirelessly project, or even activate. Subtitles, ensuring that the device instantly displays the exact same content that is being heard. Even if your cell phone is on silent mode, it provides you with a transcript in this section in real time, which is quite interesting. Moreover, it enables you to modify the image style to adjust the color or activate Dolby Atmos, and also alter some sound tools. And when you're on a video call, take note that this sidebar would also allow you to turn on the fill light, which can be quite useful. It's not a flash, but the screen lights up at its edges to better illuminate your face, useful when you're in a dark condition. And you even have an option to translate what you're saying and have the other person hear it in another language, or turn on subtitles as well. You even have an option to switch the camera with another device if it is of the same brand and has your same account, so that even though it is a video call on this cell phone, you use the camera of another, which looks like fascinating. And at last, we have this feature to identify hand gestures. Take a look at the options and observe how it displays some animations for you. These tools seem quite interesting for video calls, and they are not something we usually see on other smartphones. Furthermore, the device also has a feature to detect when you are looking at it, preventing the screen from turning off right away. In the gallery, there is also an option where you can press and hold to extract an image. Simply perform this action and you'll see the option to copy or save the image appear. Interestingly, even after selecting an image, the Xiaomi button shows up, which seems to be a bug. It prompts us to give instructions, which I assume is meant for photo editing. However, when I try to edit the photo by giving an instruction, it actually generates a text instead. So, that button is indeed a bug. Should not appear if I am selecting an image. And notice how, when you try to hold down on text to extract it, it becomes complicated and confused between extracting the image or extracting text. However, within the options, you can create a collage or even create a video with automatic editing, as it includes a small editor that provides different templates and allows you to also modify the audio or edit in a more specific and detailed manner the placement of the elements. Videos, in any case, it is a simple editor. In the artificial intelligence tools, we will find a very good amount of implementations. There is a dedicated video that I made to talk about this. In the description, you'll find the link if you want to see one by one the features with their description. Just let me tell you some features that have changed in this model, as for example, the artificial intelligence writing is now better integrated in. the entire system. So for instance, if we're using WhatsApp, you simply hold down on a text field and you'll see a button for Xiaomi's artificial intelligence appear. This then opens another box where I can input some instructions. For example, I might ask it to write an apology because I won't be able to attend the party tomorrow night. You'll notice that the artificial intelligence automatically generates a sort of skeleton message that I can later fill in. However, it's important to read it carefully because, for instance, in this particular scenario, it provides me with the space to enter my name along with the host's name. I just need to copy and paste it here. Then, I'll place my name in this section and at the top I will add the name of the recipient. With just a few taps, the entire message is composed. Clearly, within the instructions, you can specify if you want the message to be informal or provide any other type of guidance. Here, you have the freedom to be as detailed as you desire. In fact, you could also have chosen to select a large portion of text and click this button to summarize the text you've written. Additionally, you can check its spelling and grammar and even expand it to write more content. You also have the option to change the style. For instance, let's select a friendlier style and observe how in just a few seconds we have a new message ready. Previously, these tools were available only in the Notes application, but now they have been expanded to be part of everything. In this system, there exists a text field. Additionally, now within the customization section, we can find dynamic wallpapers that are generated using artificial intelligence. You simply select an image, and for this example, let's choose this one. The device will carry out an analysis, but as you might notice, it doesn't work very effectively on people. Instead, you should capture an image of a landscape or something similar. This allows you to create a specific animation, making it appear as though it is a short video. In the gallery editor now, we will also find a new button that says Enhance. This is in addition to all those buttons I already mentioned in the other video. This feature will increase the resolution of the image, which is quite useful when you cut an image and have done a lot of zooming in, or when your camera didn't capture a very good picture. It takes a considerable amount of time, and honestly, the difference is not abysmal. Another new feature is that on the home screen, you can now swipe down to access a new search with intelligence. Artificial circle thanks to Xiaomi's new engine. So, in this case, for example, let's search for tree, and in theory it should find applications, images, documents and more with that term. However, it seems that in Spanish it still does not seem to be so advanced, so it is a matter of time for this to be adapted to other languages. Surely in English it will work much better. Finally, within the web browser, note that an intelligence toolbar will also appear. This artificial tool can summarize key points of the page you're reading, allowing you to grasp the content without reading the entire article. It provides a concise overview. Additionally, you can ask this AI other questions or translate the displayed content into different languages. As you can see, it also incorporates Google's circle to search, enabling you to find a product online by simply drawing a circle around the images. Alternatively, you can translate the content of whatever you're viewing on the screen with just a single tap, allowing you to see it in your own language. Finally, on the Google side, there's also Gemini. With a single tap on the power button, you not only can text your queries, but you can also chat. Just press this button and watch as this mode is activated. Hello Gemini, you are appearing in my video review of the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. I would like you to share with me what your favorite feature of this phone is. It's such an honor to be included in your video. The Xiaomi 15 Ultra boasts some incredible features, but if I were to pick one, I am truly fascinated by its night photography capabilities. The photos it captures in low light conditions are really quite impressive. What's the feature you like the most? I'll let you know mine later, but thank you so much for assisting me with this video. Please say goodbye to the audience. Sure. It was a pleasure to be featured in your video. Best of luck with your review of the Xiaomi 15 Ultra. See you next time. It's obviously an assistant with very good capabilities, although it's available on all Android devices. But I'd like you to know about it in case you didn't know about it yet. Regarding security, we will find an ultrasonic fingerprint reader, something that is positive considering that many other high-end devices still do not include this feature. This reader offers a significantly faster unlocking experience compared to optical readers. It even recognizes your fingerprint when it's slightly wet. You can store up to 5 records, providing excellent versatility. Located within the screen, it also lets you select from various animations for fingerprint recognition. None of these animations emit excessive light, ensuring that even in dark environments, unlocking your device remains comfortable and not bothersome. You could even disable the animation. Moreover, we will discover the facial unlock feature, although you will notice that it is only in 2 dimensions, which means it is not a highly secure unlock method. The device itself will alert you about this potential risk before you proceed with registering your face, so it is recommended to rely on the fingerprint reader instead. Additionally, they offer a smart unlock through Bluetooth devices, so if you own a Xiaomi accessory like a bracelet or a watch, you can make your device stay unlocked while that connection is active. However, it does not include Google Extended Unlock that is included in most Android devices. Among other security features, we find the secure folder, which is hidden in the file manager. Sliding down, note that by releasing, we can access this private folder. It also includes an option to load a second slot, and it is as if we had two cell phones in one, each slot with its own unlock pattern. Notice, for example, that in this second slot, I do not have the same applications that are present in the first slot. Obviously, you can also verify yourself by fingerprint to switch between each of these spaces. And also appears the option of dual applications to clone some applications and be able to use two accounts on the same phone. We will find the option to hide applications from the home screen, allowing us to directly block access and require a second verification for added security. This verification can be done using a pattern different from the lock screen, or by utilizing your fingerprint for convenience. Unlike some other alternatives, this device does not include a child mode. However, it does offer a security scan against malware. Although it does not collaborate with any cybersecurity company, Xiaomi has developed this feature on its own. At the very least, you do not depend exclusively on Google Play Protect. And since we are talking about Google Play Protect, it also includes all the security options that we usually find on Android devices, except for the extended unlock, and in this case, in addition to the tools to find your lost device from Google, it also brings the Xiaomi tools, although they are disabled by default, so you have to enter the Xiaomi Cloud section to activate it. The battery has a capacity of 5,400 mAh, which at first glance looks like a higher capacity than what the average offers us, but in my test unfortunately did not go very well. Trying to discharge the battery as quickly as possible reached almost 4H, but not even reached 4H, so it falls below what we offer on average devices. With 5,000 mAh battery is somewhat disappointing, although it can also be understood due to the very high resolution of the screen. And because we put it to very intense tasks, and obviously having such a powerful processor also consumes a lot of energy if you want to do many things, leaving our battery drainer in the background, it went up a bit to 4H with 18 min, showing that it does not manage so well the things that are running in the background. As I always tell you, you as a user should be closing the things you have in the background to prevent the battery from draining so fast, and in another test that I did by playing, YouTube videos with the screen set at 50% brightness lasted 14 hours and 16 minutes. In this scenario, we were solely playing videos and found the duration quite disappointing. When compared to other devices, even those with smaller batteries, this device provided approximately 4 to 5 hours less. Therefore, it's important to consider that the battery is not going to be a strong point, but rather, it is one of its weaknesses. You will most likely need to activate the normal saving mode, which is fortunately available. It might be wise to keep it on at all times. Additionally, you have the ultra saving mode for emergency situations, which restricts many more system functions when the battery is already in need of recharging. Fortunately, you have a 90-watt charger. In Mexico, this charger is included in the box, but in other countries, it is not. Keep this in mind because it is a charger with a protocol that is not included in the box in those other countries. So, consider this detail carefully. Xiaomi's own, although it is also compatible with other fast charging protocols. If you want to enjoy the fastest possible charging, you need the original Xiaomi charger. In my test with 15 minutes, it reached 32. In half an hour, it reached 60% and the full charge was finished in 1H with 2 min. Curiously, as you see in the graph, there were two more or less high peaks, but almost always it was far away from 90 watts. So in general, I think it is not something so spectacular either. 90 watts sounds incredible, but it actually charged even slower than the S25 Ultra, even though that device has a smaller battery. Despite having a smaller battery, it performs better. It's interesting to see everything that happens, which is why it's crucial to conduct specific tests. However, it can also vary significantly based on the type of use you give it, and even the temperature of the room where you're charging it can make a difference. So this can vary, but at least in my experience, neither the battery life nor the charging speeds have been exceptional. It also supports wireless charging at 80 watts, but in this case, I haven't been able to test it because I don't own a Xiaomi wireless charger. However, you can still use other wireless chargers, though you won't be able to utilize its full power. Additionally, it features reversible wireless charging, allowing you to place accessories on the back of the phone to charge them. And to ensure the battery doesn't degrade too quickly, it features smart charging and a charging lock. This way, if you charge it overnight or keep it plugged in constantly, the device manages itself. In terms of connectivity, it offers what you'd expect from a high-end device. It supports 5 grams networks and Wi-Fi 7, providing very high download speeds. To prevent any issues, you can also block through the software and the applications that you wish to access the internet with only Wi-Fi and not with mobile data. Furthermore, it includes eSIM support, allowing you to add mobile data service using a QR code rather than purchasing a physical SIM card. This feature offers significantly more convenience, particularly when traveling. Additionally, it supports Bluetooth 6, making it one of the first devices to offer this feature, providing improved range and enhanced stability. And we will also find NFC to make mobile payments directly from your cell phone. Unlike all high-end, it doesn't have FM radio. It also supports wireless screen projection, and it does it in a good way. It can be just mirrored, but you can also project an application and minimize it on the phone while you're doing other things, but the projection is going to be maintained. Or you could just project with the screen off, so you don't consume as much power on your phone or even prevent the screen from being turned off. Notifications that come to your cell phone are seen on the wireless display. You can also opt for a wired projection, which is going to be much more stable and higher quality, although in this case it is exclusively in mirrored format. It should be remembered that Xiaomi does not include a desktop mode that allows you to open applications in a windowed format or more advanced, as if it would allow Samsung, Honor, Motorola and some other manufacturers. Like nearly all Androids, it includes Android Auto. As for sensors, there's nothing negative to report. In fact, it's all positive. It features an accelerometer, geomagnetic field sensor, orientation sensor, gyroscope, and even a pressure sensor that many high-end models have, plus a physical proximity sensor. Luckily, Xiaomi didn't skimp on these, which is often where they cut back, so they've included top-notch components. Interestingly, it even has infrared capabilities to control other devices, functioning like a universal remote control. However, it is located in a curious spot. If you look closely, you'll see that the top frame doesn't appear to have any additional elements, but surprisingly, it's situated within the camera module area. This means you have to activate your device in this manner rather than pointing it as you would usually do with a standard remote control. Nevertheless, it works quite well. In the ecosystem, Xiaomi has improved a lot. It obviously has an exaggeratedly large catalog of products that can be connected to the cell phone. We are not only talking about traditional accessories such as tablets, watches, bracelets, headphones and more, but also many devices focused on the home. Some of them don't even have great utility in connecting to the cell phone, but they can connect to the cell phone, which is a demonstration of Xiaomi's power of how they can make such a great ecosystem. But speaking specifically about the ecosystem of technological products that are not focused on the home, we also find good interconnectivity technologies that already allow us to share elements of our clipboard between the cell phone and the tablet, or use the cell phone directly on the tablet, or transfer things through Xiaomi Share. So it is an ecosystem that is gradually building well. Earlier I was telling you about the multi-camera feature, which is also a part of the ecosystem. You can even answer calls on your tablet even if they're coming to your cell phone. However, I really wish that Xiaomi would start distributing their laptops in Mexico and other regions as well. Currently, they seem to focus mainly on apps, and unfortunately, they don't have an official tool available to sync your cell phone with your computer. Therefore, you need to rely on third-party tools or Microsoft tools. However, these tools are not pre-installed, which means the process of interacting with your computer can become somewhat more complicated. When it comes to apps and services, you'll observe that Xiaomi provides you with the Mi Home app. This app is specifically designed to connect your home devices. Although they have somewhat limited compatibility with products from other brands, they do offer a wide range of their own products, which provide a tremendous variety of options. However, they are not compatible with products from other brands. They also provide their own app store named App Mall, which is often used mainly for installing bloatware. Nevertheless, it is available as a backup if they ever lose access to Google services. Despite this, they remain highly reliant on Google services worldwide due to the fact that Xiaomi Cloud is not functional outside of China. Consequently, you would rely on Google Drive along with many other applications in general. However, Xiaomi, I think, feels like a pretty strong brand in that aspect. The only thing I would ask would be for them to refine their experience in conjunction with laptops. Let's now move on to our traditional performance tests by opening many applications at the same time. This device integrates the Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, the most powerful in the smartphone market today, and is accompanied by 16GB of LPDDR4X RAM and also 512GB of UFS storage. Version 4.1 lacks a microSD option, and it took 1.5 seconds on average to open each app. This demonstrates excellent speed in launching applications. Notably, when browsing, like on Facebook, there are no issues. Even when loading videos and images, the device remains smooth and responsive. It's important to note that when we switch between different applications, we don't observe any visible reactions, such as starting up or anything similar, which indicates that the device has an exceptionally high performance level. Considering its substantial RAM capacity, we anticipated this level of performance, and it certainly meets our expectations without any disappointment for a high-end device. Also, it's noteworthy that it never freezes, and this specific application appears to operate at 60 Hz, which is excellent for a high-end device. Which gives me a little weird feeling, but, well, this would also be a matter of optimization, perhaps from the developers of the applications, but in general, it seems to have a good performance and notes that even applications that require a remarkably complicated processing, the device will also behave quite fluidly and loosely. By the way, by default, it has another 6 GB of virtual RAM, which I consider unnecessary, but there it is activated. And when it comes to storage, besides the 512 gigabytes, Xiaomi somehow manages to create an extra 16 gigabytes, which is something you don't usually see in other brands. It's a bit unusual, but it means you have excellent, ample storage space. Moreover, it comes with great tools designed to help you clean up the storage if you ever feel like the device is becoming too full. Here, through various filters, it provides different categories so that with just a couple of taps, you can easily free up space. However, let's proceed with the read and write speed test. It's important to note that this device falls short in read speed. There are many other high-end devices that can easily reach 1,500 megabytes per second without any issues. In this instance, it seems to fall considerably short. As for the write speed, there are several other devices that have effortlessly surpassed 500 megabytes per second. In this case, it remains close but hasn't exceeded that mark. It doesn't appear to be particularly remarkable in this test. But let's move on to a more realistic test. Let's export this video in 4K specifically. Remember, it contains 4 clips recorded with this device, totaling 1 minute. And that's it. It took 1 minute and 32 seconds, which is completely disappointing. I don't know why, as it's the exact same configuration we use on all the high-end devices we've tested. We're going to give it another try, this time using Luma Fusion, but it is exactly the same project with the same settings. Once more, we will use 4K in resolution. Let's observe how long it takes this time, and there you have it. It's completed in 14 seconds. It seems you might encounter a bit of trouble with CapCut, so hopefully, with an update from either CapCut or Xiaomi, this issue will be resolved. CapCut is a well-known editor, but it appears to perform rather slowly when exporting here. As for games, you're probably aware of how things work with Xiaomi. You need to access the security application. I'm not sure why, but that's how it is. Xiaomi says this. After that, you can go into the Game Turbo section. As you will notice, it is labeled Game Space instead of Game Turbo. In this section, you can manage all the games you have installed. Of course, it is not required to open this tool to play your games. However, using this tool will provide you with additional information such as battery usage, CPU and GPU consumption. Furthermore, it allows you to customize the performance profile you wish to use for each game. This customization can be particularly useful if you want to prioritize saving resources, battery life, or if you prefer to prioritize the highest possible image quality. Actually, in a customized manner, you can adjust the frame rate per second, the resolution, and the level of anti-aliasing, along with other processing settings that typically enhance the games. This way you have an extreme level of customization when playing, allowing you to decide how you want the game to perform. Furthermore, at the moment of entering, we will have a sidebar with more tools that appear simply by sliding this gesture. To begin with, we can open an app to respond to a message or check something quickly without having to exit our game. Additionally, we can clear the memory with just one tap, and the Optimize button is readily available. Furthermore, to prioritize the game and activate a kind of turbo mode or game mode, there's a button to enable Do Not Disturb and prevent annoying notifications. We also have a button for taking screenshots and another for screen recording. Another button for you can project the screen wirelessly, and there's another option to enhance latency. You can even adjust the brightness level, and there's another button to control how notifications appear. Notice that by default this bubble appears, and if you slide it down you can open it in a floating window mode. However, if you find those notifications distracting or you're too interested, you can enable this option. And now, please take note of how the notifications are going to show up on this slider strip. They do so without causing too much interruption to your game. In this scenario, observe that it waits for one strip to completely pass before the next one starts. This ensures that your experience remains quite smooth and uninterrupted while you are playing, yet it still keeps you connected to your notifications. Additionally, it includes a voice modifier button. This is useful if you want your voice to sound different in certain apps or games that use your microphone. And finally, it also includes timers that you can place wherever you find them useful for games. In Call of Duty, by default, we have the graphic quality set to a very high level at a maximum frame rate. If we increase the graphic quality to the highest setting, we can maintain the frame rate at its maximum level as well. However, if we aim to achieve the ultra frame rate, the graphic quality will decrease to a medium level. This is the same behavior observed across all devices in this range. The current high performance prioritizes the graphic quality. Clearly, we can access a variety of additional effects that are compatible with this processor to ensure a very good visual experience while playing. So we enabled all of them. With this setup, the device performed very well, maintaining an average of 60 frames per second. However, it should be noted that the default screen recording is set to 24 frames per second. We were able to increase it to 60, and fortunately, we got it to work. You can make adjustments in the settings, and it's important to mention that it allows you to record up to 50 megabits per second. This means it can offer even more definition during fast movements. However, by default, it's set at 16 megabits per second, and we decided to keep it at that setting to avoid putting an excessively heavy load on the system. Despite this, it still performed very well in screen recording. It also did a good job while playing, although it did warm up a bit more than we would have liked, and wasn't as cool as expected. We prioritized the refresh rate, and in this scenario, it increased to an average of 120 frames per second, with stabilization that we could describe as nearly perfect, displaying practically no low peaks at all. Additionally, we elevated the screen recording up to 90 frames per second to fully utilize a very impressive level of fluidity, and it continued to perform excellently, so it poses no issues for gameplays whatsoever. After that, we played Asphalt, and we made sure to tone the graphics settings to the highest possible level in every aspect, just to test the full capabilities of this device. Interestingly, it didn't exceed 60 frames per second. I find this curious because the Galaxy S25 Ultra managed to reach up to 120 frames per second. However, it also warmed up significantly, which affected its performance. So, while we didn't get as high a frame rate, it's important to note that this device stayed quite cool. Unlike the Galaxy S25 Ultra, which, despite reaching 120 frames per second, experienced noticeable warming, was also very high. In this case, it is capped at 60 frames per second, yet still provides a great experience. We then tried Genshin Impact, set to high quality by default, but we maxed out all settings to test its capabilities. The performance was indeed impressive. We consistently experienced 60 frames per second on average, with hardly any drops. Was 57, so it provides an incredibly smooth experience. Plus, it also offers very impressive graphics, and in this case, it manages to do so without overheating. When we played Call of Duty, it felt like the device might heat up more intensely as it does in other games, but interestingly, that wasn't the case here. It appears that its cooling system is quite effective. Xiaomi refers to it as the D-Dual Channel Ice Loop, which has a total cooling area of 5,100 square millimeters, and it seems to excel at keeping the device cool enough to the processor, allowing us to feel really good during extended gaming sessions. We then proceeded to play War Thunder, adjusting everything to the highest achievable settings, with the utmost quality at 120 frames per second and the most advanced anti-aliasing available. The experience was indeed very impressive. Even though it didn't quite hit 120 frames per second, it was consistently close to 90 most of the time. Therefore, it provided excellent fluidity. However, in this particular content, we did manage to get to. You might notice a bit more warm-up time when handling all these explosions and special effects. It's truly a very complex game, but as you can see, it performed without too many issues on this device. Clearly, these are extreme tests, and the right approach is to play with slightly lower settings to prevent excessive heating. However, even with this configuration, it performed well. We then proceeded to play Kark Street, which is one of the most challenging games we've tested on Android, and as expected, we elevated everything to the maximum level to conduct the most extreme test possible. Generally speaking, we can say that the performance is good. However, while recording the screen, we did notice a slight drop in performance. Stumbles became a bit more apparent, particularly in the low peaks, especially at the start of the recording. Nonetheless, it maintained a good fluidity of 59 frames per second. Please note that the temperature rose to an excessively high level, which is definitely very uncomfortable in the hand. That's why I emphasize the processor has excellent capabilities, but it generates a lot of heat. If you're subjected to a very demanding test, it would be advisable to use a simpler configuration. However, we prefer to test all high-end devices in the most demanding configuration so you can compare them with others. Lastly, we played bright memory. Please note the graphics settings, we set them to the highest possible. Even though you know some settings appear like this regardless. A bit lower, but we set it to full, and in this instance it averaged at 71 frames per second. This isn't bad, but it doesn't quite appear to be the cutting edge in the industry. That behavior seems to be quite curious, because there were moments when it would stall at 60 frames per second, possibly to manage the temperature a little better. Then it would rise back up, so it doesn't have those very sharp low peaks. But instead, it has longer periods where the frames drop a bit more, yet it still manages to maintain a burst. It's quite fluid, although once again the temperature does increase significantly. This isn't necessarily bad, but it's important to note that, for instance, the Galaxy S25 Ultra managed to reach 120 frames per second, even with slightly less heating. It appears that the space taken up by this mega camera module might also slightly impact performance in extremely demanding tasks like this game. Nevertheless, it's still a positive experience overall. In summary, this device is particularly geared towards photography, where it truly excels, especially due to its impressive range and detail at various focal lengths. You can capture images from afar or up close with telemacro, and it uses AI to enhance distant scenes. Honestly, the color rendition achieved with Leica is something I really appreciate. However, in video recording still seems to require further optimization. We perceive a very abrupt change between one camera and another. Let's say that they behave like very separate cameras, each with its own interpretation of colors, instead of maintaining a more consistent feeling between them all. It's a matter of refining with updates, but photographically I loved it. In video not so much, not that it records badly. Just the interaction between all the cameras does not convince me. I'm not entirely sure if when you record using just one of the 4 cameras it has, you'll really perceive that the quality is very good. However, one of the major disappointments was definitely the front camera, mainly because it lacks autofocus. Additionally, the colors appear somewhat duller and paler. There is certainly a significant difference in the photo quality provided by the rear camera compared to the front one. On the bright side, the design is quite nice, and we notice good durability with the Xiaomi Shield Glass 2.0, which offers a very good screen. The battery might be consumed more quickly than I'd prefer though, because of the extremely high resolution. In my test, the battery didn't quite meet expectations, and even though the charging power is 90 watts, it still took a bit over an hour to charge, which doesn't make it a very appealing factor. The software with Hyperos has been getting better, but I believe it still requires more refinement, especially at the high end, where I would like to see an even more premium experience. But it offers very good security options, not only with an ultrasonic fingerprint reader that works well, but also with tools like App Lock, Secure Folder, and many other things more. You can also open floating apps. It has a very good suite of artificial intelligence options, although they all require an internet connection, but they are available there. The performance will obviously be one of its most attractive points without being the most powerful device of the entire industry, but it will not disappoint at all. But well, you as a user will determine what you like or what attracts you most about this device. For the moment, we have reached the end of this video. If you liked it, you know you can tell us, and see you next time.